podcast from Drew and Mike is, I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Two and a mic. I have changed the title to the series because clearly, as Vladi predicted, we're no longer focused on democracy, because it has quickly become clear that democracy simply does not cover all of the necessities of a modern, innovative, growing, and fair political community. It's also important to keep in mind that as much as we are focused on developing a structure which we can work on and be comfortable with, we have an eye on the next phase. Politics, much like nature, doesn't have an end point. It evolves. And it is important to have models in place that allow us to draw on data and trends to be able to predict tendencies and flows and directions. In many ways, our discussions, the priorities and principles that Vlad and I put forward, are perhaps suggestions that we may take forward. None of what we discuss here is in any way suggested at reaching any kind of conclusion, but it's a beginning. And whether or not that beginning will lead to some kind of a legacy on the islands of our fictitious world, we shall see what lies ahead. Thank you very much, Vlad, for your time. I'm delighted to have you back again, Vlad. How are you?
Hi, Zach. I'm doing very good. What about you? How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad at all. To be honest, I love the sunshine. We sort of talked about this quickly last time as well. But it's when I'm working and it's all over my screen, I find it really hard to focus. So I've had to. I like the fact that the sunshine is there, but I'm hiding from it.
I know the problem. But okay, normally we're complaining because we have no sun. So let's enjoy the sun and the blue sky that we have today.
Absolutely.
It's not here in Germany, unfortunately.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's great also that you're back, because we're going to continue this series with regards to it's not necessarily democracy, but it's our political systems. Yeah. And I'm also intrigued in reaching the point where we've sort of set down our requirements or our beliefs with regards to what needs to be done to create the society that we think will be cool. But then what follows next? What is the next stage of our discussion? How does it then move on from there? I mean, I don't want to jump the gun. It's just I'm just to let you know, these are the kind of things that I'm thinking about with regards to where we are going, because I'm always mindful of the destination, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm getting to. Well, let's see. I can imagine we will have a lot of fun now discussing the points that we prepared. And then I can imagine we're going to have a lot of surprises, and maybe, I don't know, we can write it down, do a blog. I don't know. I can imagine there's a lot of people interested in the exercise. And yeah, but I can only tell you I'm very happy about doing this, because I'm learning quite a lot from you and from every single chat that we are having.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, thank you. I mean, I'm not sure how much that you've got to learn from me, but alternative thoughts. Okay, you're very kind. But just as a reminder or maybe even for some people who haven't heard the first discussions that we've had. So your main points, your point one was history. And if they want to know more of a detail about that, then they should try to listen to the podcast themselves. Then there was the right not to participate, or indeed participation in general. And then qualifying to vote. So these were the first three points that you raised, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the case.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, and also to update on mine. So my first one was rule of law. The second one was prioritizing social concerns. And my third one was the safeguarding of certain rights, such as free expression and so on. So again, if people want to hear those points in greater detail, then they should refer to the earlier podcasts. So yeah, Vlad, your next point. So let's do point by point. So one from you, one from me, and then that way we can get into like juicy arguments. But just out of curiosity, up until now, do you have a certain order with regards to your points, or are these just overall concepts that you feel have to be integrated?
I would say I have an order. Yeah, because I started with I like to organize my system based on my own history. Then I was talking about participation, and now I'm going to talk about maybe how it's going to be like the daily business or how it's gonna work. So I would say, yeah, it's not that it's not an order of importance. It's just the order of the process.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think all are important. I wouldn't say that it's less important or this point is more important to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's cool that you've got that. I mean, we think along similar lines. I mean, you've gone even further back. I love the fact that you introduce history because I think that history is a teacher for us. And unfortunately, very often we choose, and I say we as in, as a species, we choose not to pay attention to the lessons that history teaches us. But so I thought that was fantastic that you did that. I myself started with rule of law because I thought, and I think that it's important to establish the framework within which all of these other elements can sort of file in. And for you, that framework was the teachings of history. So we're perhaps not too far from the certain logic or sense of approach that we have. So that's reassuring for me, at least. Okay, so you're number 4, Vlad.
Okay, number 4. Public offices will require qualifications to be filled. So it means that nobody, just because you have the citizenship of the island, has the capacity to be, I don't know, a congressman, a congresswoman, or president or something. Because comparing it to what's happening or what we have nowadays, you know how it is written in the Constitution. Like if you want to be president, you only have to be over 18 years of age, and you have to be Colombian, I don't know, British, German, depending on the country you are living or you are trying to be to fill a public office. And I think that's very bad for the system. So I would start with adding qualifications that are needed in order to run an office in a very efficient and good way for society.
Okay, all right, that's an interesting point. It's similar to point 3. Okay, so there you are saying people need to be qualified to vote. Here you are saying people need to be qualified to hold public office. Yeah.
Right.
Just sort of, throwing in some, background analysis. Some people would consider that to be academic elitism, whereby you're basically saying to people, you have to go to study at least certain topics. And lots of people in society today around the world will say, well, 1 minute, these kinds of centers of education and excellence are reserved only for the elite, because poorer people, generally speaking, can't afford access to these kinds of institutions. How would you deal with that criticism?
Yeah, I get the point, and I think we are facing here 2 very different problems. So one thing, not because, unfortunately, there are some people that they have no access to education, that shouldn't be the excuse to allow everyone to do whatever they want, even if they are not qualified. So as I mentioned, I don't know, it was the last time or maybe in another podcast, but I would do everything so every child that is born here or in your island has the opportunity to become a doctor. But if that isn't the case, that wouldn't allow him to be a surgeon and to run a heart operation. You know what I mean? So what I have to do is to find a system, to create a system where the public education system is so good that everybody has the right, if they want, everybody has the same opportunity to go to a public school with let's say good quality standards, and then if they are interested in a specific topic, they can also go to college, to university, and if they want to continue investigating, to continue doing some research, they can also do a PhD if they want. Right. So the solution here, if I would say no, if I'm asking for qualifications, that would be exclusion. That would be for me like I don't know, like the wrong solution. For me, the solution is just to have or let's say, in order to have this point as a valid one, then I have to be sure that I can offer all the citizens of my island a very good public educational system.
Okay, all right. So you are guaranteeing that on your island, everybody, regardless of social status or position or the friends that they may have,
Yeah.
Everybody has the same opportunity of personal development if they choose to pursue it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
And
Wonderful. If indeed that is a system which can be created, then I agree. But also, I mean, for example, when I think about what qualifies me to do some of the work or some of the jobs that I do, it's not simply a question of a university degree. It's not simply a question of experience and so on. I think it's also a question of understanding, empathy, and more than that, the ability to listen, which I feel has really helped me to do my job, which, you know, for which some people may say, oh, okay, as a trainer, is that really the most important thing because you have to teach other people? But I don't think that's the case necessarily. Being able to hear what other people say, being able to truly understand what their needs are, helps me to act as the guide, which can, you know, hopefully lead them in the direction that they already want to go. So when we say, and when you say qualification for public service, could this also include, for example, certain levels of empathy, certain levels of understanding for how different elements within society function, certain levels of knowledge with regards to belief structures or family traditions and so on? Would these also be factors of qualification?
Absolutely. For sure, that's not that easy to test or to see if someone is, I don't know, empathetic enough or not. But here we are talking. Let me do 2 points out of it. The first thing, it's, as you know, talking about reality again and what's going on in some countries around the world. You know that you are like using public offices to do political favors. Like, okay, if you help me to, I don't know, to win the elections, then I'm going to give you one office, even if you are qualified or not, just because we are friends, just because we belong to the same political party. So what I'm doing here is just assuring a good quality, because the performance of this office is going to have a direct impact on the society. So I'm not excluding anyone. I'm just trying to achieve a certain amount of quality that ends in a better impact to society. And the second thing about the point you were mentioning right now about what kind of skills are you going to test, if I'm not sure about it, but I would say that companies as an organization, they are more efficient. They are more let's say organized compared to states. For sure, it's a bit easier because they are smaller. They have a very simple purpose compared to a society. But imagine when you're applying to a position for a company. I don't know, who cares? X company, right? Then you have to see if you are able to do this role or not. So I'm here just doing the same, right? When you apply for a company, they are going to start exactly with the same thing that I start. Like I was talking about history, but okay, they are not going to ask for the history of your family. They are going to ask, okay, what did you do in the past? Let me know about your previous experience. Let me know about your background. Let me know how was your experience with company A, B, C, or D. And then the company with you, they are going to decide, okay, then you are maybe not good for this position, but you are good for the other one. And here would be the same, right? Like we are not excluding anyone. We are just going like some steps backwards. We have to define what do a major need to be successful in this office, right? And then we define it, and then everybody in the island that can show that they have these minimum requirements can apply for the position. And okay, it's not a thing that we are going to select like like in a company. Then we have elections, but then at least we have a minimum amount of quality that I think is needed.
It's always interesting when I hear some of the comparisons between public, as in like with regards to state government, whether that's regional, local, or national, it doesn't matter, and the efficiency of private enterprise. I always find it interesting because I also tend to see that the state has the potential to be even more organized, even more efficient than private enterprise. But it doesn't always work out to be the case. And I really don't understand that. And in fact, my next point is in some ways related to that. So it's interesting that you bring up this point that private companies are perhaps better organized and more efficient when it comes to recruiting or establishing and fulfilling targets and so on. Yeah, interesting. I had a few other questions for you, but I don't think it's fair that I should sit here and jump at you without having revealed my next point, which you can then jump back at me. So I think it's fair to give you that opportunity too. Is there anything else you want to say with regards to your point? Is there any sort of last argument that we should consider?
Not now.
Okay. All right. Cool. So my one: governments rule by right of majority voting. They must, however, represent decisions, expenses, and activities annually to a separate oversight committee chosen by the people at equal intervals to leadership elections.
Wow, that was very long.
Yeah, sorry. Some of these, that's not even the longest one. Yeah, I've got to work on my delivery, don't I?
No, it's totally fine.
Yeah, okay. But basically, because this is the point of efficiency which you raised, it's quite funny that you took it there. But when governments have, for example, during the pandemic, we've seen that lots of countries their governments have given contracts to organizations that up until then had no real history, to use the magic word again, within the sector that was being applied. So in the UK, for example, there were individuals, or there was at least one case of an individual. He ran a pub, but then he received a government grant of at least 6 figures, I think, to supply equipment for a laboratory. Yeah, this guy all he had done before that was run a pub. And all of a sudden, he was given this huge government contract to supply them with laboratory equipment. And that for me, was a bit strange. And then afterwards, it came out that this person had he knew personally certain members of the British government, and so therefore somehow he was entered into this, I guess, preferred supplier list and was given a certain amount of money to provide this equipment. So for me, for example, that kind of thing is just not acceptable. Yeah, it's not acceptable. It's happened in Germany as well. It's happened, I'm sure, in other countries too, where government contracts have been given to people who were of personal acquaintances. Yeah. And it shouldn't happen. I'm not saying it's automatically corruption. I'm just saying anybody who works in the public field should have a far higher standard to follow with regards to accounting, with regards to quality of service, with regards to the purity of their decision making. And that's why I want to have a committee which analyzes the work of government and which then also reports that work without political bias, so that the people on my island can properly identify the work of government.
Sounds great. Totally agree, 100%. And I can, you also say it, but it's actually, I wouldn't say the same point, but it's very similar to my last point. And the thing is, if I just have one big question. I don't know. I know you were not criticizing my point. You were just saying, okay, there could be some voices, and they could maybe say, hey, you're excluding people because, why should someone be qualified to run a public office? But here is the question. So if the people, like the minister, the mayor, I don't know, if they are not qualified, how can we expect from them that they are in a position that they can decide if you are a good supplier or not? So I cannot. That's for me like a logical chain, and you have to start with the people who has the right to make the decision. Okay, I'm working with supplier A or supplier B, but if I say, okay, the one who is making the decision, it's fine. He only has to be, I don't know, German or Colombian, and that's enough. Then I cannot expect from them that this person can make the decisions we need. So for me, this is just a good, how do you call it? Like, it's go together with my point. And yeah, sure. So in the same sense, is because you were giving us an example, this guy who was actually, I don't know, running a pub, and then he started, I don't know, supplying the state with some medical devices. So I can imagine governing or organizing a society is by far more complicated compared to organize some medical devices and, I don't know, buying here, selling there. So if, in your opinion, this guy shouldn't be the chosen supplier, why we would allow a system where this guy could be the next president, and we don't care that in the past he was, let's say, a good pub owner. You know what I mean? So in the systems we have right now, if you are doing great business with a pub, and like your neighborhood knows you and they think, okay, you are cool, and somehow you start doing some stuff with social media, and suddenly you're the next president because you have a big smile and because people like you, and that's it. And then you are there the first day in office, and here is the pub owner, and now it's playing the president.
I mean, look, you and I have often had a discussion in the past. What is better, a good dictatorship or a bad democracy? And this, in many ways, has been a subject which lots of people have straight away said, "Oh, no, democracy wins every time," and so on. And my contention with the problem with, for example, a dictatorship is that if you have the first dictator who thinks about the benefits of the people and is really a good dictator, there is never a guarantee that the next person who comes along is going to be as good, nor indeed the one after, nor indeed the one after. But if the system that you have is such that it requires a dictator, you no longer have that control. The benefit of a democratic system is that if you have a person who is rubbish, at the next election, you kick them out, regardless of what they try to say, and if they promise they will change. The people have that opportunity. With regards to dictatorship, it's a bit similar with the monarchy. So if you have a king or a queen, and they're fantastic, there's no guarantee that their child or heir will also be fantastic. And I look at that, and I also take into account, once again, the historical element that you put in. And I think about the US system, because there's the founding fathers, the Constitution, and so on, and they had all of these wonderful concepts of representation, or defending the rights, and so on. But how much of those values are represented in today's political system in Washington? Because I feel, when you're talking about qualification, what qualifies a person to become a leader? Well, in the USA, it's money. Money qualifies you to potentially become the president. And, I'm not sure that was the principle that the individuals who founded the Constitution of the United States had in mind. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. I see what you mean, but I'm a bit lost. So I don't. Where is the maybe I'm not good at connecting the dots. But where is the I don't know, like the relation between what we were discussing and these kind of problems. Because what I'm telling is not about democracy against dictatorships or the other way around. I just think qualifications are something good, and that's the same for I don't know. I always try to avoid this discussion or this conflict, because in my opinion, I don't really see the sense behind it, because at least the way I understand, democracy and dictatorship, they are not opposites. They are just different things, like cars and bikes. It's like you're never gonna. You can tell me for now what's best for you, if a bike or a car. But there's no possibility that you can compare both in a way that at the end you say this one is better. So for me, I just try to avoid the discussion. And in my system, I think qualifications are something needed. And one thing that we shouldn't forget, public offices are by far more than the 4 or 5 offices that are very popular. So we have thousands of it within a system. So you not always need this thing with the leadership and so on. This is also a thing that I don't know. It's a bit, I wouldn't say overrated, but to run a public office in a very good way, you don't need to be the best leader ever as the crucial qualification that you need. For being the president, okay, I can understand it, because you also, people are believing in you and so on. But we have thousands. Normally, the state is the biggest employer of every single country. And if it's not the biggest, it's like the, second, third one. So we're talking about a lot of offices, and I'm just trying to avoid corruption. Because we are the same thing with the pub guy, because he was related to someone, I don't know where in the then he got the contract. I'm just trying to do the same with the public offices. So not because you are my friend, I'm going to offer you here to start tomorrow working at the home office doing some stuff. You need qualifications for it. And why? Because there's some work that have to be done, and only if you have certain qualifications, you are going to do a good work.
Yeah, my just to answer the first point that you made there was the tenuous connection. It's the legacy of qualification. So, if you have a dictator, the dictator's qualifications are that person's ability to take over government and to organize society in a way that they believe to be correct. And if you have a good dictator, they will do good things. But because the legacy system is not in place to ensure that the next dictator is also qualified, that argument would fall short in a dictatorial system in the same way as in a sort of monarchy. Whereas in a democracy, I feel the possibility of establishing a qualification system, and one which can then be used in different generations, is far more likely. So I just threw this in because I always wonder to myself, how did that person become president? And so when you ask the question, I think how did that person become president? Yeah, Ronald Reagan was an actor, for example.
Zelensky as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, and so therefore there's a reason why these individuals became presidents. Is it simply a question of fortune? Did they somehow stumble upon a path and somebody said, yeah, you're a good idea, why not that? It's not always clear. So therefore I think the question is important about qualification, but every country will clearly have their own view of what actually qualifies a person or not. I know lots of people who were very critical of Donald Trump as president, but when it comes to analyzing Boris Johnson, are they as critical? Again, I don't know. Why would the criteria be different then?
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you. But one thing that it's very important to me, we have, at least in my opinion, avoid one mistake. And talking again about cars and bikes, you cannot look at a car and try to understand it as it would be a bike, because all the results of your studies analyzed are going to be wrong. So one thing that I'm seeing very often, you cannot analyze a dictatorship with democracy eyes, because you are just going to be confused and you are not going to get any kind of results that you can use. And for sure, when we are talking about some qualifications to run a public office, then we are not talking about dictatorships, because in a dictatorship you don't even have elections. So for me, I get your point, but for me this is not really relevant, because we are not talking about creating a dictatorship in our island. We are not talking about, at least not me, creating a democracy on our island. We are just trying to define like the best way we think we can organize ourselves as a society. So for me, this it's like if you start talking about right and left within totalitarian dictatorship, like it made no sense, because you just don't have this spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the point was clear, but I'm just trying to avoid analyzing everything with democracy eyes, because then you are going to be always you are never going to be happy. If you are expecting from every single system, for every single point that I'm listing, or for every single situation, then we start doing in my opinion, the biggest mistake that political scientists have been doing during the past 40, 50 years. They are not trying to understand systems. They are just trying to see how democratic systems are. And doing that, they are forgetting the system. So we are already the political science compared to, I don't know, to physics, biology. We just talk in the past. We are not understanding anything. We have no tools to, for example, to explain what's happening in Russia. We have no tools to explain what's happening in Colombia. Is this a democracy? No. Is this a dictatorship? No. So what it is, then we don't know, because we can just say, okay, this is not democratic because A, B, C, and D. And that I don't know, maybe I'm going into another direction, but for me, if we really want to understand ourselves, then we have to forget that idea that that democracy is the main goal in life, right?
No, I completely agree. What I'm doing is looking at the system through the eyes of a democracy, but not because I want to confirm that a democracy is the best. What I want to do is test the democracy with new concepts. And if these new concepts stand up better than the democratic principles that I have, then I'm more than happy to take on those other alternatives rather than democracy.
But
However, I'm using democracy as my initial standard, and
but
then I
would you do
want.
the same? Would you do the same with a dictatorship? Like trying to like, okay, dictatorship is something. Let's see if we can improve it.
Well, a
Would you do?
dictator. Do you know what? I would, depending on the situation. Yeah, because if I find myself in a country, let's say on my island, okay, my island, things are not going well. People are not being allowed to behave in the way that they wish to behave. They're not allowed to develop themselves, have education, try different kinds of work. To feed their families in the way that they want, and then at the same time, I have the ruling class where they have servants. They can, they essentially take what they want without any respect for other people. From there, I would help in a revolution. Yeah, and so therefore, when you create a revolution, it's always possible that a dictatorship will arise. In the initial period of that dictatorship, while control is established and while a new system is introduced, it's important to maintain control, because otherwise people just lose. They just start killing everyone. It's a bit like the French Revolution, yeah. As in, a lot of people forget the fact that Robespierre led these killer gangs through the streets of Paris, essentially killing anybody who they thought, that person's not a part of our revolution. Kill them, So when you've even gone through the process of a revolution and you've established a dictatorship, you need to then keep control of the people who fought alongside you, because otherwise they will simply repeat the crimes of the government you basically overthrew. So from that perspective, I would say, yeah, I would have to see a system also through the eyes of that dictatorship, and I would view it critically. Luckily, I'm not in that situation. I have the privilege of enjoying a democratic life. And so therefore, I will see things through that democratic ideal, and I will test the democracy that I live in, if you know what I mean. As in, I am critical of democracy because I think it's not a perfect system. And I think that far too many people suffer in a democracy, and that's not acceptable. Yeah. So, when people say that, yeah, it's the best system that we've got, I could say, okay, to an extent, I may agree with you. But until I can say this is the best system for everyone, then I'm not content. So from this perspective, I'm completely with you. Because I think it's not good enough. We have to keep going, and history should not bind our progress. It should guide our progress. If that makes sense.
Yeah, make totally sense. I'm totally with you, but just my problem with the generalizing, because I get the point that you are enjoying the I don't know the how lucky you are about living in a democracy. But the thing is, at least the way I understand things, I would say you are happy about living within the German political system, because we also have democracy in Colombia. If you take any book about political science, about Latin American politics, you will see Colombia as one of the oldest and more stable democracies in South America and Latin America, right? But go there, and I'm not sure if you would be also happy to be there. We have a lot of people, really, we have 2022, and we have there a lot of kids that they are literally starving, that they have no access to clean water, they have no access to public education, they have nothing, and they are also living in a democracy. So I can imagine that you are happy about having all the perks and all the benefits and all the freedom that we have. Is also my case here in Germany, but that's not because of democracy. That's because of the German history, what a German society really achieved after the Second World War. That was really amazing, for sure, with the help of the US and so on. You know the history as I know it, but that's so many different things. Imagine the German democracy without the Marshall Plan. Imagine the German democracy without the strong economy that we have here. Imagine the German democracy with all the know-how that we have here in terms of engineers, or in terms of engineering, in terms of all these things. Imagine the democracy in Germany without the huge corporations that we have here, like these big things, Siemens, BASF, and so on. Imagine, so we are using, or we are just banalizing the topic. And that's a thing that I really always try to avoid, because we also have democracies in other countries. And believe me, I would be, if I'm, imagine today, I came to the world today. I was born today, right? Okay. And for some reason, I was born in a very poor family. Please, if I have to choose between being my country, Colombia or China, I would do everything so it's gonna be China. But if you ask me, do you want to live in a democracy or dictatorship? It's like, okay, I know China is not really a democracy, not at all, right? But I know that as a poor child, as a poor man, I have more opportunities in this dictatorship compared to living in this democracy in Colombia that is just I know, we are having elections. We talked about it last week, or I don't know, some days ago. But what should I do with my right to vote if I have nothing to eat?
No. Yeah, no, look, I think you're perfectly right, and but this is also a different question, as you say. This is not really only the limitations of democracy. This is the realization that our democratic system relies upon the exploitation of other countries, and we are then profiting from that exploitation. So, I can live quite well or quite comfortably in my West European country, because the system here is also based upon the exploitation of resources and labor in other countries. And that's a different system, though. That's called corporatism. And we haven't even started to talk about corporatism yet, if you see what I mean. But I completely accept what you're saying, and I believe that inherent within democracy and the alliances with other democratic countries, or countries which want to further develop into a democratic system, there should be a responsibility of mutual assistance. And if I'm not mistaken, Colombia is also a part of NATO. Colombia is also within the European organization or framework for cooperation and security. And so therefore, there is a responsibility to assist Colombia within the European setup. Have we done enough along those lines? I'm not sure. Does Colombia want the European Union to do more? Again, I don't know. Clearly Colombia has had a lot of problems with dealing with its with the narcos, with the drug trade, and all of these issues. And this is partially why the USA and the European Union have become involved, because they want to either reduce the coke trade coming out of Colombia. Some might say they want to control it. I don't know. Yeah. But the point is that there is a kind of a series of alliances established with Colombia. They should most probably be doing more. That's all I can, I can say on the topic.
Yeah, I get your point. I agree with you up to a certain point. But yeah, I know we are somehow part of the NATO. So we are not a member of the NATO, but we are in, yeah, I don't know exactly the how is the frame, but we are like a part of the organization without being a full member.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very, very interesting what you are saying, because indirectly, what, at least the way I'm understanding, the future of Colombia or any other country depends on the help they get from the outside. I know that's not the only thing that you are mentioning, but
Mm-hmm.
that would be that it's an important point. So let's talk again about, I don't know. No, China wouldn't be like the best example right now, but let's go back to my first point. Let's organize the island based on our own history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
If I continue, and that's what for sure Colombia is doing, and many countries around the world, if I'm just continuing like just trying to do everything, so at some point I can say I'm European, that's totally wrong, and that's never gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was about to talk about China. Like they decide to be, hey, yeah, you are now talking for I don't know how many decades that democracy is everything you need and education is everything you need and all these things that we are listening to since the Second World War finished. And what did they do? Something very different. And sorry, but those are facts. It's not that I want to live in a system like China, but the poverty rates, the way they decrease it, they did it in a way that any single democracy can show those results. So I'm not telling like to my own country, hey, let's do it the Chinese way, because that would be the same mistake but with another goal. I'm just trying to, I don't know, I would like people just forget what's happening in the outside. For sure, we are an international community, and it's not about being isolated. We need strong relationships to everyone, but we should stop trying to be like Europe. We should stop trying to be like China. We should stop trying to be. It's like it's a normal thing. If I try to be like you, even if at some point I can say, hey, I'm achieving my goal. Yeah, but if I try to be like you, at the end I'm still Vladi. There's not gonna be some day where I wake up and I see, I'm sacked today. No, I'm just gonna be a copy.
God forbid. Yeah.
So that's why, yeah, I get your point with maybe we should help other countries. Yeah, I'm yeah, totally agree with it. But that's not gonna be the solutions. And yeah, that would be another topic. And I know this. That would be maybe too big for now, but I also don't really, not that I don't believe, but the credibility of all these international organizations, yeah, very, very, very tough, because they know they are just helping with their own interest. And I just to wrap it up, I would say try to learn about your own history and culture. And I don't know, if you want to be rich, I don't think that you have to do exactly the same thing Bill Gates did in the past, because maybe you're gonna just fail. So find your own way, and there are plenty of possibilities to become rich in this world. So if you just focus on being Bill Gates or on being, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, I'm not sure if you're gonna succeed with it. Find your own way, and that's gonna be easier. You're gonna to have more fun, and at the end, yeah, you are discovering your own personality and being yourself, and that's the most beautiful thing I think that we as humans can do with our life, like finding our own path.
Yeah, the thing I love it when you go on these talks, because you bring up and you introduce so many different elements to it, which and I made a note on some of them. I agree with you that it's not a question of help. This is why I tried hard to avoid using the word help. I said mutual assistance. Yeah, because I remember one of the most educating political documents that I've read in the last 10 years was as an interview that I helped translate for Brot für die Welt. And it was an interview of an African leader in a period just before the European Union was going to sit down with the African leaders and start to talk about a new path forward for mutual assistance and economic investment in Africa, and so on. And this African leader said that these talks are great. However, there are some things that the EU has to do, which they have still not done. And until they do this, none of these talks will be very, very successful. And he said the first thing is that the representatives of the EU have to recognize the shit that they've done in Africa up until now, because sometimes he says it seems from the language as though their European ancestors never set foot in Africa, that they'd done bugger all in Africa, when clearly we know that's not the case.
Yeah.
Another thing that they have to do is sit down as equals, because he said that it still seems as though European representatives come to the table in Africa and look down at the African leaders. Until you look at us in the eye as equals, then no agreement is going to be successful. And I listened to I read this interview, and I found it to be absolute. That's so true. That is so true. So therefore, when you're saying here, no, it's not a question simply of help, because help can be good for the short term. Yeah, there's been a disaster, somebody comes to help. That's cool. But that's not a long-term strategy. And if what we want to create is long-term solutions, then we need to think beyond, oh, I can help you. No, I'm talking about mutual assistance, where we act as friends for the long term, something which can benefit our kids, the next generation, and so on. And that's what I think should be the right way of looking at this. You're also right to talk about the international organizations. I'm doing a workshop over the next couple of weeks, and the title is Reputation or Profit. And that kind of reminded me about that question. What's more important, reputation or profit? Or in the case of these international organizations, the work that they do or the benefits that they get from that work? You know, it's an interesting question. Yeah, Vlad, what can I say, man? As in, we've managed to get through one each, yeah, and I think that's a fair score.
Yeah.
With regards to which one or both or how we're gonna, develop our, because you've got your island and I've got my island, but somewhere in the distance there's another island which we both want to, build a system in. So we're going to incorporate stuff from both of our islands, and I'm wondering what's going to happen there. But we're not going to find out just yet. We've got too much to talk about. So, Vlad, thank you very much, man. It's great. It's great to have the opportunity to to hear your thoughts on these topics, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, same here. Also looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here. And as I said at the very beginning, I really learning quite a lot from you. Just from time to time I feel like challenged, and that's very nice, because then I have really to analyze my own arguments, and I'm always trying to prove if I'm wrong. And talking to you, that's always a very nice exercise, because I think that's a very beautiful thing, that we have like the same goal but very different path to achieve that goal. So thank you very much, and very looking forward to the next session.
Mike. Two and Mike.